Good afternoon, Mr. Baldyga.
My name is Jerry Baldyga. May it please the court that this refers to case SJC-09349. I would like the court to make note that although on this is saying the Dudley District Court, there's 4 defendants: the Dudley District Court, the Town of Dudley Police Department, the Town of Webster Police Department, and a private prison called Wyatt Detention Facility in Central Falls. I'm honored that the court would allow me to address the matter of flipping state citizens to a federal court. And I hope it's a worst-case scenario, but it's kind of interesting and might provide you with enough information to create a doctrine so it don't happen to other people. Between the 4 defendants, each plays a crucial role in the conspiracy to violate the plaintiff's rights and to ensure the success of the local offices to conceal fraud. In this matter, the local police officers entered into like a rogue investigation where none of them kept any paperwork. There was probably, over the course of a few months, 10 officers involved, and they claimed they had an investigation, but there was never, ever a report of a log or anybody keeping any records of anything according to that investigation. On March 1st, 1998, they sent a person to my house to attempt to buy drugs, but we never had a conversation about drugs. Then the guy came in my house. I confined him. I frisked him. I found the wire device. I pulled the antenna out of the wire device, told the guy to get out of my house and don't come back. I looked out the door, and I seen private vehicles pulling into the yard. There was no police cruisers, no blue lights. I heard people right there outside the corners of my building, and I'm thinking, I don't know if I should have did this or not. It was probably a dumb thing to do, and I put some money in my pocket, walked out the door, locked it behind me. I went out in the backyard. I heard somebody say, "Stop or I'll shoot." I put my hands in the air. I stopped. The guy came, put me on the ground, and he's yelling, "I got one, I got one, who is this?" So they walked me around the front of the building and turned me over to another police officer. He says, "Well, you're under arrest for drug trafficking." I'm saying, "Well, I don't have no drugs. I threw the guy out of my house. What are you talking about?" And they put me in a car, and next thing you know, I look up, and they're kicking the door down into my house, and at least 6 or 8 officers ran in the house. And they brought me to the Webster Police Station. I wasn't booked or fingerprinted. I kept asking to call an attorney. They didn't allow that. They put me in a side room and tried to interrogate me. I was held overnight. And on the second day, I kept asking for phone calls. They wouldn't allow me a phone call. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, a drug agent appeared, and he had some people with employees of the Wyatt prison with a van, and there was Webster police officers there also. They forced me into the van, and I was taken from Webster to Central Falls, Rhode Island, and forced into this private prison. I had never gone before a court. They had no order of detention, no legitimate warrants or nothing like that. And I'm thinking the federal officer wasn't involved. He didn't participate the day before. He never seen me commit a crime. The guys that owned the van contracted to the U.S. Marshals in Worcester, and they hadn't participated. So I'm thinking, well, I don't know how this is happening, but I do know that the officer who initially arrested me, his name was James Hoover, he owed me the duty to bring me before the local Dudley District Court the following morning. That's a statute and a regulation and a normal procedure, if a local officer arrests you, they're required to bring you before the local court the next morning. And if they want to, it's the judge's authority to determine if he wants to hear the case or move the case before a federal court. In this matter, I did, some studying about it and everything. I wrote to the governor's office of Mitt Romney, and under Freedom of Information, and I asked them if there was ever a waiver from a state court or acceptance of the jurisdiction from a federal court, and they researched my name, and they wrote back to me and told me there was neither on record at the governor's office. On March 2nd, when I was brought to that prison, on March 3rd, I was taken from that prison and forced to an appearance at the Worcester Federal Courthouse, where they charged me with conspiracy. But that was another false charge because there was never no conspiracy. I mean, I was a person by myself in my own house. And it was a sad situation, but the magistrate that day, when they asked for an order of detention, the magistrate looked at the district attorney and the drug agent, and he said, well, you didn't think you needed me yesterday, you don't need me now. And he refused to sign the order of detention, and they put me back in a van and took me back to Rhode Island. I wrote to the U.S. Marshals under Freedom of Information and asked them, to show proof that there was an order of detention. They 3-4 times, they never responded. So I wrote to the U.S. Executive Office of the U.S. Attorneys in Washington, D.C., and they forced the U.S. Marshals to respond, and I received a letter from them that shows the contract that Wyatt Prison had with the U.S. Marshals, and it said that the U.S. Marshals researched their records and there was never a detainer in my name. So all the while that I was taken from to prevent me from going to the local court because the police broke into my house without a warrant, and then they had me removed so they wouldn't have to face the circumstances they got themselves into. And
Mr. Baldyga, excuse me, aren't these claims that you have already made in the federal court?
No, ma'am. I didn't discover this, the circumstances, until 2001. I had a hearing at the Dudley District Court based on my paperwork after I was already convicted. It had to do with warrants that were used. The local police officers came up with search warrants 16 days after this happened in the federal court. And when I asked this hearing, Judge Versey in the Dudley District Court, his name was on the warrant, and he says, I'm not involved. Mr. Baldyga needs an attorney, and these warrants never came before this court. So now we come to the question, a local Webster police officer, after the fact they broke into my house, either made these warrants up in a copy machine at the police station or by some manner of corrupt persuasion got somebody at the Dudley court to sign them and backdate them at a later date. I mentioned this stuff in my paperwork, and that judge had a hearing, but he wouldn't respond whether or not the court actually issued the warrants, and he wouldn't respond whether they were valid or not by failure to follow procedure. On the warrant itself, it says, you are hereby commanded to bring the person seized and the evidence before this court. And that never happened. And again, a person has a right to argue that evidence before it can be switched to a federal court. There's laws that pertain to that. I'm not an attorney, and I have access to some of that stuff, but I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. And it was a brutal situation that other people shouldn't have to go to. The Worcester court actually acted like a fence for the local police and helped them cover up their crime. I was appointed an attorney when I got there. His name was Peter Attenberg, and I believe he went to the Dudley Dudley District Court and found out there was no search warrant, and when he told the district attorney there, they switched me to another attorney. And I was given an attorney that, after the time went by and I got convicted, I realized the things he said to me and the way he acted, he helped prosecute me rather than help me as a person. I'm going to look you right in the eye and say this is the truth. And I know I asked for equal protection. I wrote a lot of places and sent tons of complaints and claims, and nobody's ever said that my charges were frivolous, and nobody's ever disagreed with any of them. And
Mr.
even
Baldyga,
up to recently, you know, I wrote to the Attorney General's office, and that's why that person isn't here. I believe they know what I'm saying is the truth, and
thank you, Mr. Baldyga. What we will do is take the case under advisement and read all the papers, and then an order will issue sometime in the future.
okay.
Thank you.
Did I do all right?
All right. Carry.